I never thought a group vacation photo could break me until I saw it didn't include me. There they all were, laughing on a yacht deck, champagne flutes raised, sun dripping off their skin like a blessing. And then the message appeared beneath it, glowing in my inbox like a knife. You won't be joining us on the cruise. My wife prefers to keep it just family. Just family. My chest tightened. That cruise? I helped fund it. The house they refinanced to pay for it? I paid off that mortgage in full 2 years ago. This wasn't about a trip. It was a message, a declaration. I sat there in the same living room where I used to babysit their kids, where I'd wrapped birthday presents, where I'd brought over groceries when money was tight, and never once kept score. Until now. I stared at that message, reread it, and read it again. Just family. As if I weren't. I opened my drawer and pulled out the old folder, the one they assumed I'd long forgotten about. It held the original contract. My name, still on the deed, listed as primary lien holder. I'd made sure of that. Quietly. Legally. They never bothered to ask. They just assumed I was a tired old woman with nothing left but casseroles and guilt. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone to vent. I didn't even pour a glass of wine. I opened my tablet, pulled up my attorney's number, and typed one message. Cancel the escrow. Put the deed back in my name. And list it. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't waver when we spoke 5 minutes later. I wasn't grieving. I wasn't confused. I was done. For years, I made myself smaller so they could feel bigger. I softened the truth to keep the peace. Let them talk over me at dinners. Let Melinda treat me like an afterthought. Let Joshua forget I was the reason they could even afford their lifestyle. Not anymore. That message, that single sentence, gave me clarity I hadn't felt in decades. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was betrayal. Open, calculated, and financial. And now, it was my turn. 2 months before they uninvited me from the cruise I helped pay for, I sat across from a mortgage officer at Foothill First Bank, signing away $138,000 as a down payment on Joshua and Melinda's new house. I'm not asking for repayment, I'd said, folding the check in half. Just a guest room and inclusion in the family. Melinda had smiled. That sweet, performative smile that always felt like a closed door. Joshua had reached across the desk, covering my hand with his. Of course, Mom. This is your home, too. I wanted to believe him. God, I did believe him. The house was in Fort Collins, a beautiful craftsman with wraparound porches and a finished basement. Room for the grandkids to grow, Melinda had said. Close to good schools. And close enough that I could help with pickups and piano lessons and sick days without driving through Denver traffic. When the bank officer explained the structure, that I'd remain a primary lien holder, I nodded, quietly, intentionally. I wanted them to have the house, but I wasn't going to make the same mistake twice, not after what happened with my sister's estate. Not after watching her children contest every clause, throwing their mother's name around like a bargaining chip. So I kept my name on the paperwork. Not for control, for clarity, for protection, for a future I didn't fully trust but desperately wanted to believe in. Melinda had even hugged me that day, right there in the parking lot. We'll make sure you always feel like part of things, she'd said. Always. Back then, it sounded like a promise, not a performance. We took photos in front of the sold sign. Melinda posted them, tagged me with a heart emoji. I scrolled through the comments that night, smiling at the congratulations from her college friends and coworkers. None of them knew that the down payment came from the woman smiling quietly in the background. Not a gift from the couple, but a sacrifice from someone who wanted, just once, to feel indispensable. Looking back, I think they saw me not as family, but as funding. And maybe that's where I went wrong. They didn't shove me out all at once. That would have been too honest. It happened in small, quiet humiliations. The kind people like Melinda are experts at delivering. 1,000 little cuts, disguised as forgetfulness, busyness, or concern. It started with the school recital. I'd been helping Emma practice for 2 weeks. Her little flute solo was the only thing she'd talk about. I even hemmed the skirt she wore that night. But when the photos showed up on Facebook, I wasn't in a single one. Because I hadn't been invited. "Oh, we thought you'd be tired," Melinda said later, breezily. "It went late, you know how those things are." I told myself not to read too much into it. People forget. People get overwhelmed. It's fine. Then came the birthday dinner, Joshua's, at the new steakhouse downtown. I found out about it from my neighbor, whose son works there. "Didn't know you had family in town," he'd said cheerfully. "Saw them all there. Looked like a celebration." When I asked Joshua, he hesitated. "It was just last minute. No big deal. We thought you had book club that night?" I didn't. Then Melinda started saying things at family dinners. Subtle things. "Oh, don't stress her. She forgets details." "She gets overwhelmed, Joshua. Just do it yourself." "She means well, but you know how it is." In front of the kids. In front of neighbors. Like I wasn't sitting 3 feet away, like I was fading or losing it, like I didn't know exactly what she was doing. And maybe the worst part, I still wanted to be included. I still offered to babysit, still brought over soup when the kids got sick, still asked if they needed anything when I made a Costco run. I thought if I just stayed kind, stayed helpful, stayed useful, they'd let me belong again. But the final straw, the moment I stopped making excuses, was the cruise. The family cruise. Melinda's parents were going, her sister, her cousins, even their friends from the gym. They paid for it using a cash-out refinance on the house. The house I bought. I didn't find out from them. I found out from the mail, a generic envelope with the bank's logo, addressed to Joshua Rollins or current resident. I opened it without thinking, and I saw the refinance details. A loan balance I'd never authorized, tied to collateral I still legally owned. That's when it snapped. No more soup. No more school pickups. No more playing the polite, grateful mother-in-law. They wanted a life without me? Fine. Let's see how they like it when the house goes with me. By the time the sun went down that night, I had 3 boxes open on the floor, and my laptop glowing like a lighthouse in the dark. They thought I'd just roll over, that I'd crumble like some fragile old woman in a cardigan. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. Before I was Nana or Josh's mom, I was Dorothy Rollins, senior financial auditor for the Colorado State Treasury. 32 years of combing through fraud, buried fees, and misfiled grants. I could spot a forged signature in 6 seconds flat and track a misappropriated dollar across 3 shell accounts before lunch. And more importantly, I never stopped keeping records. When I sold my last house, I kept the paperwork. When I helped Joshua and Melinda buy theirs, I kept every document. I'd made sure my name was on the deed not as a co-owner, but as primary lien holder. That detail matters. It wasn't sentiment. It was structure, control, quiet protection for the day I might need it. That day had come. The first thing I did was pull the HUD-1 settlement form. It showed my contribution, full down payment, taxes prepaid, closing costs covered. Not a loan, not a gift. I had made sure it was logged as a secured investment. And I had the lien certificate to prove it. I opened my Excel tracker, the same one I used when I managed 6-figure audits. Each tab labeled, each number verified. Melinda always smiled when I said I liked to keep organized, like it was a cute little hobby, like it was a trait of harmless aging. She didn't know I'd watched their accounts, when they asked for help, when they claimed to be behind on groceries, when she said they were struggling with the kids, school fees, and she had no idea I still had view-only access to their HELOC account. I scrolled through it now and felt my mouth tighten. $78,000. Drawn in 6 months. On my asset. Fancy cruise. Kitchen remodel. A golf simulator? I printed the statements. Highlighted every draw. Noted the dates. Labeled the tabs. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was calculated. I sat back in my chair, letting the weight of it settle. The betrayal, yes. But also something sharper. Cleaner. Purpose. They didn't respect me because they didn't understand me. Because they thought retired meant harmless. They wanted a version of me that cooked, smiled, and stayed conveniently quiet. But I'd been underestimated before, and I'd survived bigger storms than this. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. "McAllister and Hoyt," the receptionist said. "This is Dorothy Rollins," I replied. "I need to speak with Mitchell Hoyt. Tell him it's about a deed transfer, and it's urgent." Mitchell Hoyt hadn't changed much in 10 years. Same tailored gray suit, same no-nonsense glasses, same way of shaking your hand like a contract just got signed. "Dorothy," he said, rising from behind his desk. "It's been a while." "Not long enough?" I replied, setting the thick folder on his desk. "I need your full attention, and I need it now." He opened the folder, scanned the first page, and let out a low whistle. "Is this what I think it is?" HELOC drawdown statements, unauthorized refinance, misuse of collateral, and forged communication with the lender. All tied to a property where I remain the legal lien holder. He paused, looked up. "And they don't know?" I smiled without warmth. "Not yet." Mitchell flipped through the pages. My original agreement with Joshua and Melinda, the down payment wire, the lien record, the title copy, the HUD one. It was all there, bound tight and labeled in chronological order, like a noose. They didn't remove you from the title, not even from the lien record. That's... He looked over his glasses, shockingly careless. "No, Mitchell," I said, crossing my legs. "That's called arrogance." He nodded slowly. "You've got full ownership authority. They're tenants at will." I leaned forward. "Then, list it. Effective immediately." He blinked. "You want to sell it?" "No, I am selling it." His expression changed from curious to impressed. "This isn't just a legal move. This is personal." "You think?" I said, pulling out my phone and opening the cruise photo again. "This was emailed to me by a neighbor. They're calling it a family trip. Paid for with a refinance on a house I paid for, the same house they've now used to erase me." Mitchell reached for a pen. "I can get the paperwork filed by Thursday. Title office already has your name on record. You'll need to sign a disclosure of intent and a formal listing agreement. Have it sent by tonight," I said. "And Mitchell, start the fraud alert with the county. There's more to this than just exclusion. Melinda's been forging things, I'm certain of it." He exhaled through his nose. "You always did come in prepared," I stood. "They made me feel like a guest in the home I bought. Now they can find out what it's like to be evicted from a house they never truly owned." As I left his office, briefcase in hand and spine straight as steel, I realized something. They didn't see me coming. They still don't. I couldn't sleep that night. Not from nerves, from clarity. Everything was falling into place, finally, strategically, and it wasn't revenge driving me now. It was reclamation. I sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad in front of me, writing it all down. Not just what they'd done, but what I was going to do about it, in bullet points, with dates, with outcomes. I didn't want a screaming match. I didn't want an apology. And I sure as hell didn't want to be welcomed back, like some stray pet they felt guilty about ignoring. I wanted the clean win. That meant 3 things. 1. Legally reclaim the house. Mitchell had already filed the disclosure of intent. He was drawing up the eviction paperwork next. Tenants at will have few protections, especially when the lien holder is fully documented and the title is in her name. They'd get a formal notice within 2 weeks. Let them try to fight it. They wouldn't win. Not unless they could reverse the county records. And even Melinda's ego isn't that big. 2. Protect my credit and my name. I had a fraud alert on file now, through both the county assessor's office and the bank that issued the refinance. I'd contacted the credit bureaus too. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about my identity, my legacy. They'd used my name to fund a vacation. Tomorrow they'd find out I'd used theirs to trigger a legal audit. 3. Expose the betrayal, clearly and in writing. I was done hiding. I wanted a paper trail so long and so clear that no one, not the church ladies, not the neighbors, not even Joshua's co-workers, could mistake what happened. This wasn't some family squabble. This was abuse, financial, emotional, deliberate. And lastly, a 4th bullet I hadn't planned on writing, but did anyway. 4. Rebuild my life with dignity, not bitterness, not spite, just truth, boundaries, and space to become a person again, not a pawn in someone else's narrative. That meant a new home, smaller but truly mine. It meant rejoining my book club, finally getting that small dog I'd always wanted. It meant choosing what family meant to me, not waiting for someone else to define it. I drew a box around the checklist, folded it carefully, slipped it into the folder with the house records. And as I turned out the kitchen light and walked up to bed, I whispered something I hadn't said out loud in years. You don't get to decide who I am anymore. The first real crack in their story didn't come from a lawyer or a bank. It came from Linda Sweeney. Linda and I aren't close, just polite. She lives 3 houses down, has a garden full of plastic flamingos, and more opinions than filters. We swap tomatoes in the summer and comments at the HOA meetings, but that's about it. So when I saw her name in my inbox, I almost didn't open the message. Subject line, ... Is this why you're not going on the cruise? I clicked. Inside was a forwarded RSVP email. Cruise itinerary attached. And one sentence that made my jaw tighten so hard, I felt it in my temples. Melinda told us you were in a memory care facility. Otherwise, of course, you'd be invited. Memory care? I blinked. Read it again. Memory care. That's what she was telling people. Not that I was busy. Not that I'd opted out. Not even that we'd had a falling out. But that I was incapable. That I was tucked away in some locked hallway with beeping monitors and padded chairs, too far gone to notice or care that my family had sailed away without me. And the kicker? The cruise was paid in full by a home equity line, the same one I had just confirmed had drawn $78,000 against the house I owned. It was right there in the payment source, plain as day. Foothill First Bank, account ending in 3,301, same account tied to the house in Fort Collins. They'd not only used my equity, they'd lied about my mental state to do it, smiled about it, toasted to it on the open sea. I stared at the photo again. Joshua with a drink in each hand. Melinda in a designer swimsuit. The kids splashing behind them. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just got cold. A kind of cold that settles in your chest like granite. Not sadness. Not anger. Finality. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was reputation murder. The slow kind. The sneaky kind. The kind you don't see until you're standing outside a circle you paid to build. I picked up my phone and scrolled to the contact I hadn't called in years. Allison Burke. She used to be a forensic investigator for the state before she retired. We'd worked 3 fraud cases together. I texted, "Need help confirming HELOC misuse. May involve identity fraud. You in?" She responded 30 seconds later. "If they forged your name, I'm bringing gloves." The gloves were coming off. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't the one being erased. I was the one writing the record. The bank smelled like paper and waiting. Same one I'd used for 20 years. Same chipped tile by the entrance. Same coffee machine that brewed what they insisted was hazelnut. I hadn't been inside in months. But when I walked through those doors, it felt like stepping into an old version of myself. The one who used to wear slacks and heels, not compression socks and cardigans. "Dorothy?" came a voice from the far end of the counter. I looked up, smiled. "Hi, Doreen." Doreen Becker had been a teller here since we both had shoulder pads in our blouses. We used to get lunch every Thursday before life got complicated. "You look good," she said, walking around the counter. "What brings you in?" I handed her a form and leaned in. "I need full disbursement records for this HELOC, starting from March of last year." Her brows lifted, just slightly. "Is this about the property in Fort Collins?" I nodded. She didn't ask anything else, just took the form and gestured toward one of the glass-walled offices. "Give me 10 minutes." I sat there staring out at the parking lot while Doreen printed and sorted. I already knew what I was going to see, but seeing it in ink, it still landed like a punch. 8 disbursements, all from the equity line tied to my name. Remodeling, travel expenses, educational supplies. That one especially stung. They'd labeled cruise activities for the kids as curriculum support. Want me to notarize your copy? Doreen asked gently. Yes, I said. And one more thing. Can you flag this account for review? She hesitated. Dorothy, are you opening a fraud case? I met her eyes. I'm not just opening it, I'm naming names. Because that's what this was now. Not just betrayal, not just exclusion. This was financial abuse. They'd used my name, my collateral, my decades of savings to fund their fantasy. And all while spinning a narrative that I was losing touch, that I was struggling, that I was someone to pity or manage. I pulled out the photo again. That damn yacht. Doreen looked down and winced. They told everyone you had early-stage dementia. I know, I said quietly. She slid the folder back to me. I'll make the call to the internal investigator myself. We'll get this looked at. You're not alone, Dot. I squeezed her hand. I know I'm not. That night I emailed everything to Allison. Every page Doreen gave me, every draw, every signature. Allison replied with 2 words. They're cooked. And I believed her. Because I wasn't the frail old woman they painted me to be. I was the woman lighting the match and watching the paper trail burn them alive. The first post hit that Sunday morning. A vague little thing in the neighborhood Facebook group, under Melinda's name. Reminder to take care of your mental health, even when older family members refuse help. Sometimes letting go is an act of love. No names, no direct accusations, just implication. And of course the comments rolled in. I know exactly what you mean, Mel. Been through that with my dad. You're doing the right thing. Proud of you for setting boundaries. By the 3rd post, the story had taken shape. I was forgetful, paranoid, prone to emotional outbursts. Melinda called it compassion fatigue. Joshua stayed silent, which was worse. Then the phone calls stopped. Linda didn't wave from her porch anymore. The pastor from our church canceled lunch, saying he had scheduling conflicts. My book club group text went quiet. The silence was louder than any insult. This was their strategy. Preempt the fallout. Paint me unstable so when the eviction notice came, no one would question it. They were cutting off my community before I even acted. It was smart. Ruthless. It was exactly what I would have done, once upon a time. But they'd forgotten one thing. I know how narratives are built, and how to dismantle them. I printed screenshots of the posts. I saved every comment. I wrote a timeline of events, mapped out each message, every date, every smear. When they eventually screamed about how I was overreacting, I'd show the trail of manipulation and let others decide who they believed. I wasn't going to play defense. Not anymore. That night I got a text from Joshua, first one in weeks. Hey Mom, can we talk? I feel like things are getting blown out of proportion. Mel's really stressed. Blown out of proportion. I didn't answer. 2 minutes later, another message followed. She didn't mean to hurt your feelings, but you've been a little difficult lately, and I think some space has helped. There it was. The same boy who once cried in my arms over a scraped knee, now rationalizing why his wife could steal from me and then drag my name through the digital dirt. I took a deep breath, set the phone down, then I wrote one final note in my binder. Do not engage emotionally. Document everything. Let the evidence speak. Because they wanted me flustered. Defensive. Apologizing for things I didn't do. Instead, I was getting ready for the storm. But not to weather it, to bring it. I wasn't just going to fight them. I was going to bury them under the weight of their own paper trail. It started with the property tax statements, still in my name. Every year, mailed directly to me. Every bill. Every receipt. Not once had they forwarded them. Not once had they offered to split it. I found the latest one unopened in a drawer. Joshua had stuffed it there, probably hoping I wouldn't notice. But I always noticed. Then came the transfer logs. Bank statements showing the $138,000 I wired to the title office for their house purchase. Down payment, taxes, prepaid insurance. I'd labeled the transfer real estate investment, Rollins property, intentional, legal. Permanent. Melinda had called it a gift, but banks don't process gifts like that. Not with that level of documentation. I stacked the receipts in a red binder, numbered every page, even had Doreen from the bank notarize a summary of account activity. My old auditing habits were kicking in, and it felt good, like muscles I hadn't used in years stretching back to life. And then came the voicemail. I'd missed the call while checking my mail, but when I saw the number local realty office, I felt my stomach drop. I played the message twice, then a third time, just to make sure I heard it right. Hi, this is Paula from Red Mountain Realty, just following up on the listing updates. Melinda said you'd passed, and we were clearing the records on the Fort Collins property. Passed. She told them I was dead. Not moved, not unavailable. Dead. A chill moved through me. Not fear. Something colder. More precise. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. This was identity fraud. This was criminal. And it was almost laughable, really, that they could be so sloppy, that she'd lie to a realtor, a licensed professional, with an answering system that records every word. I called the realty office back. Calm. Professional. I'm very much alive, I said, and I own that home. Silence. Then a whispered, oh God. I got a written statement from Paula by the next day, signed and time-stamped. It went straight into the binder. At this point, the evidence wasn't just piling up. It was screaming. Every document, every lie, every withdrawal from an account tied to my name, it all led back to them. They'd underestimated me. And now I was assembling the story they wrote, one document at a time. Not with bitterness, with precision. Because stories built on lies crumble fast, especially when you start telling the truth in certified mail. If you've never stood at a county records counter and asked to pull your own name just to see what's been done behind your back, let me tell you something. There's nothing lonelier than watching a clerk squint at a screen and hesitate. Give me just a second, ma'am, she said, already turning toward the back. Seconds stretched. Minutes tightened. When she returned, she handed me a folder. Is this your signature? She asked. And I felt it, like something slipping loose behind my ribs. Inside was a limited power of attorney, filed last April, granting Melinda Rollins the right to act on my behalf for financial decisions tied to the Fort Collins property. Notarized, witnessed, filed. Everything about it looked legitimate, until you looked closely. The signature was a decent copy of mine, close enough to fool a stranger. But the D in Dorothy was too wide, and the T in Rollins slanted the wrong direction. I know my own pen strokes, and that wasn't one of them. Worse, the witness listed was Carla Jennings, Melinda's cousin. I remembered her vaguely, a dental hygienist with a side hustle doing mobile notary work. I hadn't seen her in person in over a year. Apparently, she'd been plenty busy behind my back. I took a photo of the document, then a slow, steady breath. Can I request a certified copy? I asked. And the filing metadata, timestamp, office location, initials of the intake staff. The clerk blinked. You work in law? No, I said. Just know what a forgery smells like. Back in my car, I stared at the scanned copy on my phone. The audacity of it. They'd faked a legal document, filed it at the county office, and used it to pull nearly $80,000 from a property they didn't own, all under my name, my birth date, my trust. And they hadn't even bothered to hide it that well, because they didn't think I'd ever check. They saw my silence as weakness, my trust as permission. They forgot who raised Joshua, who paid off his student loans, who kept every tax return and document since the year he was born. They forgot I was always watching, even when I pretended not to be. I forwarded everything to Mitchell and Allison. Subject line, confirmed forgery, county filed. Allison replied instantly, we've got them. You want to file a formal fraud complaint? Yes. Yes, I did. Not for revenge, for accountability. Because Melinda didn't just steal my money, she stole my name. And that was about to cost her everything. I left the house voluntarily, not because I was afraid of them, I wasn't, but because I needed distance, privacy, room to breathe and plan without Melinda sniffing through my mail or Joshua knocking on my door pretending he still cared. The motel off I-25 wasn't glamorous. The kind of place with a lobby that smells like reheated soup and regret. The carpet was stained. The curtains didn't close all the way. But it was quiet. And it was mine, if only for a little while. I sat on the edge of the bed, laptop open, watching the latest uploads from the cruise. Melinda had no idea she'd made her Instagram public again. She probably thought I didn't know how to check. Joshua in a tux at the captain's dinner. Melinda in some glittery gown she probably billed as a medical necessity under the HELOC. My grandchildren, Emma and Lucas, in matching outfits, faces lit by soft Bahamian sunset, and there, in the back corner of one picture, Melinda's cousin, Carla, smiling, toasting with champagne. The same cousin who notarized the forged document. They didn't even have the decency to hide. I kept staring at the photos, not blinking. Not because I was angry, because I was stunned by how easy it had become for them to erase me. My room buzzed with the glow of the mini fridge, the silence pressing in from every corner. And for a moment, just one long, hollow minute, I questioned everything. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I'd held on too tight. Maybe Melinda had just done what people do when someone like me refuses to disappear quietly. I closed the laptop, and that's when the message came through. From Emma. Just a simple bubble on my phone. "Nana, why aren't you coming? I saved a seat for you next to me." I sat very still. Not crying, not yet, just letting the weight of those words land. They'd told her nothing, or worse, they'd lied. And she still wanted me there, still believed I belonged. I stared at the message until my vision blurred. Then I took out a clean sheet of paper and wrote something I hadn't written in months. "You finish this. Not for revenge. Not even for justice. You finish it so she never learns to accept being erased. Because Emma deserved a family that honored truth, that honored loyalty. That didn't treat the people who showed up like options." I looked around that little motel room, the chipped paint, the buzzing bulb, the cracked vinyl chair. This wasn't my end. It was just my quiet before the storm. The invitation was printed on thick cream paper, the kind they use for weddings or graduations. Formal. Polite. Just threatening enough. Subject: clarification meeting, title and financial planning, location: Mountain Ridge Title Company, Tuesday at 10 a.m. Purpose. Refinancing options for Emma's future education planning. The bait? A new loan, supposedly to fund a 529 college savings account for Emma. Melinda never could resist a money conversation where she thought she had the upper hand. And Joshua, well, he follows whatever voice is loudest in the room. Melinda replied within an hour. "Of course, we'll be there. We'll bring our attorney." Perfect. I arrived early. Brought a folder thick enough to make a noise when you set it down. Mitchell Hoyt met me in the lobby, gave me that calm, knowing look lawyers give just before they destroy someone's whole plan in under 30 minutes. "They expecting a refinance discussion?" he asked. "They're expecting control," I said. "Let's disappoint them." 10 minutes later, I sat at the polished conference table in the title office boardroom. Leather chairs, glass water pitcher, a small dish of mints no one ever eats. I was dressed in my best navy suit, the one from my retirement dinner, the one I wore when I was still someone who commanded a room. Melinda walked in like she owned the building. Her lips curved into that smirk she wears like perfume. Confident. Dismissive. Joshua followed her, shoulders tight, eyes darting like he already sensed this wasn't going to be the kind of meeting she promised him it would be. They sat across from me. She crossed her legs. He fiddled with his pen. Her lawyer, some young man with shiny hair and no experience, set his briefcase down and began unpacking paperwork like it mattered. Melinda broke the silence. "Ready to sign the house over to the next generation, Dorothy?" I didn't blink, didn't smile. I slid the folder across the table. "I've already done that," I said calmly. "Just not to you." Her hand froze mid-reach. Joshua looked between us like he was trying to find the missing script. Mitchell leaned forward. Let's begin with the deed. Melinda's attorney opened his mouth and immediately shut it again when he saw what we laid out. Because this wasn't a conversation anymore. This was the reckoning. Joshua looked confused. Melinda looked furious. And her lawyer looked like he suddenly regretted not reading all the documents she gave him. The silence stretched so long you could hear the tick of the cheap office clock. Mitchell opened the folder slowly. Not for drama, but for precision. We'll begin with Exhibit A, he said, the deed. He slid it forward. There was my name, still the legal owner, lien holder, signature verified and filed, notarized, county stamped. Melinda tried to laugh. You said this was about Emma's college, she snapped. It is, I said, just not the way you assumed. Joshua leaned forward, whispering, Wait, what does this mean? Mitchell looked at him directly. It means you've been living in a house you don't own. You are tenants at will. Mrs. Rollins retains full legal control. As of this morning, she's accepted a purchase offer. Closing is Friday. Melinda's face broke. You're selling our home? She shrieked. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. It was never your home. You just forgot to read the terms, or thought I wouldn't. Her lawyer stammered. There was a refinance. Mitchell interrupted, voice smooth as glass, which was fraudulently obtained using a forged power of attorney, filed with a notary connected to the borrower's extended family. We've submitted handwriting samples for expert review, and there's a fraud report in motion with the county. Melinda's voice cracked. You can't do this. I already did. Joshua turned to me then. His eyes weren't angry. They were scared. Not for me. For himself. Mom, where are we supposed to go? I met his eyes, steady. You should have asked that before you used my name to fund your cruise. Melinda slammed her hands on the table. This is elder abuse. She's unstable. She doesn't know what she's doing. I smiled, slow and deadly. Funny. That's not what your bank said when you used my identity to apply for $78,000 in withdrawals. Or when you told a realtor I was dead. Her lawyer stiffened. You have that in writing? Mitchell pushed forward the voicemail transcript. Yes, we do. Melinda's mouth opened, closed. She sank into the chair like air had been sucked out of her lungs. Joshua ran a hand through his hair. This is going to ruin us. No, I said. You ruined you. I just finally decided to stop saving you from the consequences. They sat there frozen, staring across the table like, maybe I'd change my mind. I didn't, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was eviction, with receipts. Melinda's attorney was the first to speak, but not with confidence, with caution. Do you intend to pursue legal charges? He asked Mitchell, eyes darting toward the forged POA in the folder. Mitchell didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled out the next document. Exhibit B, disbursement logs from the HELOC, all funds drawn under Dorothy Rollins' name, verified through the originating bank. He paused. Used for luxury travel, personal renovations, and private purchases, none of which benefited the lien holder. He laid the papers out slowly, one after the other. The room began to shrink around them. Exhibit C, he continued, the forged power of attorney, with notarization by Melinda Rollins, cousin, Carla Jennings. Note the date of filing. He tapped the page. Same week the refinance funds were disbursed. Melinda tried to speak, but Mitchell wasn't done. Exhibit D, handwriting analysis from a certified document examiner. Preliminary result, inconclusive but strongly suggestive of forgery. He placed the report in front of her lawyer. And finally, Exhibit E, I said softly, sliding the transcript of the voicemail to the center of the table. A call from a realtor who was told by your client that I had passed away. The silence was surgical. Joshua slumped in his chair like he'd aged 10 years in 5 minutes. Melinda's hands trembled. She didn't even try to speak this time. Her lawyer swallowed hard. We were told this was a misunderstanding. Mitchell folded his hands. It was a campaign, built on lies, financial abuse, documented deception. Melinda's voice cracked, thin and wild. This is insane. She's trying to ruin our family. No, I said. You did that when you decided I was no longer useful. She opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. Because what do you say when your entire game collapses under actual proof? No tears, no shouting, just the cold, flat sound of consequence landing. Mitchell closed the folder with finality. My client is within her full legal right to sell the property. As of this morning, the transaction is in escrow. Closing is Friday. Melinda finally snapped upright. You didn't even give us notice. I gave you a home, I said, eyes locked to hers. You gave me a lie. Joshua looked up, broken. You're really going through with this? I already have. And that was the end of it. No dramatic exits. No last-minute apologies. Just the slow crumbling of two people who thought they'd buried the truth. Instead, they watched it rise, signed, stamped, and sealed. The title officer entered with the final confirmation. Calm, neutral, professional. Ms. Rollins, she said, glancing down at the folder in her hands. The deed is active in your name. The sale has been processed through escrow. You retain full authority to transfer or terminate tenancy at will. Translation, it's done. The house was mine again, and legally leaving their control within 72 hours. Joshua blinked at the floor like he couldn't quite hear it. Melinda didn't blink at all. She sat frozen, like a statue of anger wrapped in disbelief. You can't do this, she whispered. We live there. Our kids. I didn't make them homeless, I said. You did that. The second you forged my name and lied to the bank, Mitchell added. You'll be served a formal notice by Thursday. Sheriff's Department will handle it. You have until Friday at 5 p.m. to vacate the property. Melinda's jaw clenched. You're going to have a lot to answer for. This will ruin you with the family. I looked at her. Really looked. And I saw it. Fear. The recognition that her version of events no longer controlled the room. That the old woman she dismissed had just burned down the house she built with lies. And did it legally. I don't need to answer to anyone, I said. Because unlike you, I didn't steal. I didn't forge. And I didn't abandon the people who loved me the second they became inconvenient. Joshua finally spoke, his voice small. Where will we go? It nearly gutted me. But I'd spent enough years confusing sacrifice with love. Enough years believing kindness meant erasing yourself. You're adults, I said. Figure it out. No one argued after that. There was no point. Their attorney asked for copies of all documents. Mitchell handed over the packet. We stood. I gathered my binder, my pen, my quiet pride. Melinda didn't say goodbye. Joshua didn't hug me. They just sat there, stunned by the one thing they never saw coming. Me, choosing myself. As I walked out into the bright September sun, something strange happened. I felt light. No more pretending. No more waiting to be included. No more swallowing disappointment like it was part of the family recipe. They'd spent 2 years rewriting the story of who I was. And in 30 minutes, I'd taken the pen back and signed my name. They stormed out 5 minutes after I did. Melinda first, heels clicking on the pavement like fury had a rhythm. Joshua trailing behind her, head down, hands buried in his pockets like he was 12 again and had just been told recess was canceled. Their attorney stayed behind to make copies. I saw him through the glass, rubbing his temple like he already knew how bad this was going to get. Outside, Melinda's voice rose. She wasn't even trying to keep it private. She humiliated us. In a public office. I should have recorded her. Joshua murmured something I couldn't hear, probably begging her to lower her voice. It didn't matter. Everyone who needed to hear already had. Mitchell had told me that morning before the meeting started, once the legal gears turn, they grind slow. But they grind everything. And right on cue, the fallout began. That night, I got a call from the sheriff's department confirming that eviction notices had been delivered. Clean, lawful, enforceable. Then 3 voicemails blinked onto my phone, one after another. Dot, "This is Sandra from Choir. We just heard. We had no idea what they were doing to you." "Dorothy, it's Paul. I feel awful." I believed what Melinda said. "If you need anything, I'm around." Dot. Linda here. That Facebook post? Melinda deleted it. People are talking. Melinda had tried to poison the well. But the thing about truth? It lingers. People talk. And receipts travel farther than gossip. Her posts vanished. Her curated narrative, about being the poor daughter-in-law, who just tried to care for a forgetful old woman, crumbled the minute documents, hit desks, and voicemail transcriptions made the rounds. And Joshua? He sent me a message. Just one. I didn't know what she was doing. I stared at it, then locked the phone and slid it across the table. Not because I hated him, because I needed to love myself more than I pitied him. The next morning, someone knocked on my motel room door. I braced myself, but it wasn't anger. It was Linda, holding 2 coffees and a bag of muffins. "You're not alone," she said. "Not anymore," I cried then. Not for the betrayal. I was past that. I cried because I was still standing, and people were still showing up. Not out of guilt, not out of pity, but because I'd told the truth, loud enough that it couldn't be buried. The silence they left me in? It's starting to fill again, with voices that matter. The house sale closed at 4:36 p.m. on Friday. I watched the email confirmation roll in like the final line of a chapter I'd been too scared to write for too long. Funds dispersed. Documents recorded. Possession transferred. A clean, lawful end. No yelling, no police. Just paper. The great equalizer. By Saturday morning, Joshua and Melinda were no longer legal occupants. Their attorney filed a motion to delay the move out. It was denied. There was no loophole to crawl through. I'd checked every lock, sealed every crack. They had until noon to vacate. The neighbors said they left in silence. A moving van. No goodbye. Just boxes and pride shoved into the back of a rented truck. They'd built a house on someone else's foundation, and now that it was gone, they had no idea how to stand. That same day, the County Fraud Division opened a formal investigation into Melinda and Carla Jennings. The forged power of attorney, notarized by family, used to extract over $75,000. That wasn't just unethical, that was criminal. Carla's license was under review. Melinda was notified by mail that she was named in a fraud complaint, with the option to retain legal counsel or respond directly to the investigator within 30 days. I didn't need to press charges myself. The documents had already done it for me. And then came the will. I hadn't updated mine in years. Not because I forgot, because I didn't want to face what it would mean to erase my own son from the pages of my legacy. But after what happened, it was simple. Joshua and Melinda, removed from my estate, done with one signature, witnessed and notarized. Instead, I placed everything, savings, investments, retirement accounts, into a new trust, controlled independently, with one primary beneficiary, Emma. And I added a clause, funds to be released only when she turns 21, managed by a financial advisor I trust. One Melinda can't sweet-talk, bully, or manipulate. I sat in my motel room that night, the final notice spread out on the nightstand, and realized something I hadn't dared believe for months. It was over. The legal battle. The lies. The humiliation. Not a reset. A reckoning. And in the end, the people who tried to erase me lost everything they stole, and then some, because they gambled on me being too tired, too weak, too soft. But they forgot. I built everything they stood on, and I could tear it down, legally, precisely, and permanently.